It's good to be with you once again to recap the homily, to allow you to have another opportunity to hear what the message was for you. This last week, I made a video for the kids at the Assumption School. They loved it, and other adults encouraged me to make the video available to as many people as possible. I've received so much feedback from that video, people saying things like, I loved it, thank you. It just helped to give me new life, new encouragement. So each person saying that in their own way. Some people saying that the video made them cry and laugh and smile, and that it was the right thing for this moment that we're experiencing, that it's what they really needed. A few other people saying things like, Father, I think you can dance, or saying nice moves. A few people, though, mentioned to me, like, in a serious note, they're like, you are so strong. Like, where do you get your strength? So I've been kind of reflecting and resting in that notion, those questions. I would say that my strength comes from having the ability to have deep and honest conversations with God about what it is that I'm facing in my life. I think that the video and all the feedback that people have given me this last week shows that having a deep, honest conversation with God may be what each of us really need right now in this moment. The readings set up for us give us this background, this foundation for having a deep, honest conversation with God, because God gives us deep topics, life and death, true life and true death. So from Ezekiel, we hear God promise to the people of Israel in exile that he will open their graves no matter where they are and have them rise from their graves, and that God will put his Spirit in us so that we may have true life. And St. Paul, too, he reminds us that God's Spirit lives in us, that we have this great reason to hope. And Jesus, in the Gospel, he reveals who he is, that he is the resurrection and the life. But he does it in this mysterious way where, he pauses and waits for 2 days after hearing words that Lazarus is sick and ill. And so when he gets there, when he finally gets to Bethany, he sees that Lazarus has been in the grave for 4 days. But yet through that patience, through that endurance, God is glorified. And so for us, Jesus reveals that he is the resurrection and the life, that we are to believe in him and have confidence in him. So with all of these things in the back of your mind, I ask you to reflect on your own life, what's going on in you. Like, in this moment, what is growing in you? This past week, what have you been facing? Anxiety, frustration, fear, pride, sins? Or have you experienced new life, gratitude, joy in the Lord? What is it that is growing in you? And where are you turning for comfort and support at these moments? I think in a way what we turn to can indicate to us what it is that's growing within us. We know that God wants us to know that his Spirit is within us, that it's available to us, that in this moment of struggle where we face new challenges, we're to look within to the fire of divine love, and so that is what is growing within us. We grow in our ability to look to God within by having these deep, honest conversations with God. And in doing so, we drink deeply of the Spirit within us, the Spirit that gives us true life. So is it the case that the fire of divine life is growing in you? Today I want to give 3 images that help you to have deep, honest conversations, that you may learn from them, and in a sense that you will drink more deeply of the Spirit in you. The first image being like for those who may not feel like God is present to them in this moment, the same way that he had before when things seemed to be going much easier or smoother, before their life was kind of disturbed by the impact of everything going on. The second is for those who may not yet be able to admit to themselves that they're blinded by emotion, self-concern, or pride, so that these things in their life just haven't allowed them to see things clearly. And then the third would be an image of deep conversation for those who are dead to sin. So for those who are struggling to feel God's presence, the image that I give you is the purifying fire of the furnace. When metals are being purified, the impurities bubble to the surface and are removed so that what remains is that pure metal. It's said that the refiner knows that the metal is pure when after it cools, the refiner can see the reflection of his own image in what he looks at. So for you, if now God seems silent and distant, trust that God is purifying you. That while God may have withdrawn himself in consolation or feeling, he has done so that you may better know his Spirit within you. So in the silence, as you enter into that silence, maybe you experience more temptation or different emotions, become more aware of your imperfections or worries and anxieties, like all these different things kind of bubble up to the surface, within us in our hearts. It's on the forefront of our minds, and we have to look at what bubbles up, and we may not want to look at it, but in order for us to grow, we have to look at these. But at the same time, we know that we don't want to look at them alone, that we want to have that deep, honest conversation with God, that as these things bubble up inside of us, that we offer them to God. Like we tell him about them, we share how they're impacting us, and we entrust them to God by vocalizing, trying to find those words that express what is going on within us. And in so doing, as we offer those things to God, we are purified. So as the fires of divine love purify you, give what is bubbling up in you to God. These imperfections, these impurities, the things that arise. Offer all of those things to God. Do it over and over and over again, as long as it takes until the refiner can see his image in you. So I encourage you just to embrace the silence. Do not be afraid that you no longer have those consolations or good feelings, but just really enter into that and have that deep conversation with God. For those who are blinded by grief or pride or things like that, now in this moment, I offer you this image. So recall Mary Magdalene weeping at the tomb of Jesus. When we look at Mary, we see that she's beside herself at the tragedy of witnessing the crucifixion and death of Jesus, the loss of her Lord. And now she's outside the tomb and she weeps as she fears that others have taken the body of Jesus away from her. As Jesus comes to console her, her grief blinds her to how Jesus is acting in her life at that very moment. Jesus is standing there right in front of her. She hears his voice, but she doesn't heed it. She does not allow herself to hear the voice as Jesus speaking to her. Jesus says to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" And she's trapped in her own way of thinking. She presumes that it must be the gardener, saying, "Sir, if you carried him away, tell me where you laid him." And then Jesus speaks to her, calling her by name, saying, "Mary." And then in that moment, she's taken out of that state and she's able to see things rightly again. And too often for us, when life around us is not as we would like it to be, we don't turn to God and have that deep, honest conversation. Rather, we just sit there and we pout. We try to manipulate God with our tears. We don't express our actual needs, and we keep God at a distance, all the while deceiving ourselves that we're giving our words, we're spending this time with God. But in a sense, we don't speak to listen, and we're not talking to hear God. It's just a way, form of our own where we're just kind of saying like, this sucks. And we tell God how we think things should be, but we never stop to listen, to hear God's voice, to see how God may be acting in this moment. So we never hear what God has to say, even if all God is offering to us is his silence. That sometimes God offers us that silence so that it says to us, wait, be calm, trust that I am here. See my presence, allow me to be present to you. So often we can be trapped by our own preconceived notions. And in this, the solution is to stop, to just pause and look to God and say, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready to really talk, to hear what you have to say. We may say things like, it may pain me. I may have to feel what I have not let myself feel in a long time. We may have to feel like that deep pain, but we feel, pain that we may have kept at bay for so long. If we stop and look to God and have that deep, honest conversation that he's been longing for, it allows us to let go of those things that blind us, things like anxiety, frustration, fear, pride, and in letting go of those things, we feel the complexity of letting God share in our tears. So we feel like that weight of that raw emotion where, he's with us in our weeping. And that we no longer have to just sit there on our own and pout, but that we deeply weep, united in that spirit within us. So awaken to the spirit within us. So we recognize that God's love in our weaknesses and limitations. We let go of our pride and fear at our shortcomings. We let Jesus be the resurrection and give us new life. We finally let God be the Lord of our life. So for those who are dead through mortal sin, I give you this encouragement. Decide to no longer live without the divine life in you. Return to the Lord. Have that deep, honest conversation with God that you need. Tell him of your need for his mercy and your desire for freedom from the sins and the struggles of life. And then, have that deep, honest conversation again when you go to confession and seek his mercy there. So on our own, without the Spirit of God within us, we don't just die, but we perish. So I give you these 3 images. Hopefully they help you to enter in and have that deep, honest conversation with God. So my encouragement now is, to seek true life, and that is that to seek true life is to let the fire of divine love enliven and renew your hearts. So that when you share your life at a deeper level with God, you allow yourself to have that deep, honest conversation with him. And that you look honestly at God and you're able to see him for who he is, and he can reveal to you who you really are. And that in sharing these deeper parts of yourself, you feel your heart opening up in a new and deeper way. So let the deep, honest conversation allow you to drink deeply of the Spirit within you, the Spirit that gives you true life. Allow Jesus to be the resurrection and the life in your heart today.